So Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, two really powerful elected Democrats have officially been reduced to internet memes because they actually looked like evil villains coming to you from their lair. I mean, it seemed like no one in the news could focus on what these two numbskulls were actually saying because they were too amused by the fact that Chuck and Nance were diminished to a relentless mockery online. So we'll focus here on what they actually said. But first, I mean, we have to enjoy some of these because it wasn't just coming from right-wing trolls. I mean, Huffington Post, quote, Pelosi and Schumer become instant memes after response to Trump's border wall speech. CBS, the lawmakers stoic, okay, that's the euphemism of the century. Appearance standing at the same podium in front of a row of flags made for perfect meme material. And Twitter users quickly noticed comparing them to everything from that famous painting American Gothic to angry parents and Bond villains. Now, USA Today, Fox News, The Hill, all got distracted by the pretty epic memery. But what the evil dynamic duo, said last night is actually really important, primarily because it was a bunch of lies. Perhaps the most jarring part of this entire charade was not their appearance, but the fact that Chuck and Nancy were telling you, the American people, that things that are common sense and that everyone in the world knows to be true are not so, with no facts to back it up. And that's dangerous because they are not telling you the truth. And we here at the White House Brief have the facts to prove it. So now that we've gotten the memery out of our system, okay, one more. Let's break down the many steaming lies in the Democrats' response.
The fact is, on the very first day of this Congress, House Democrats passed Senate Republican legislation to reopen government and fund smart, effective border security solutions.
No, Nancy. The fact is that the stopgap spending didn't allocate any new wall funding. So how is that smart, effective border security when, according to the guys who actually know what they're talking about, unlike these clowns, are saying smart, effective border security solutions must include a wall? That's a must. The same measly past budget for border security, one of the most important aspects of a sovereign nation, isn't cutting it anymore. A source at Customs and Border Protection tells us that unequivocally, a border wall is critical, and it's proven itself time and time again. Where we put a wall in, we reduce illegal border crossing by more than 90%. The wall is an essential piece of any comprehensive solution, along with certain other things, of course. On the other hand, citing zero experts, unlike us here, Pelosi insists the wall will not work.
Forcing American taxpayers to waste billions of dollars on an expensive and ineffective wall.
Saying a wall would be ineffective is like saying wheels no longer work. It's worked around the world for literally centuries, and it's been effective actually right here in our country in certain places. We've explained this many times here on this program. And in fact, according to our CBP source, it will not waste money. It will actually save the country more money in the long run to have a border wall in place because it will cut down on the massive amount of resources it takes to track, to arrest, to process, and to prosecute the illegal immigrants. Okay, but please continue spewing your lies, Nancy.
The fact is, the women and children at the border are not a security threat. They are a humanitarian challenge, a challenge that President Trump's own cruel and counterproductive policies have only deepened.
Incorrect. I mean, whenever she says, the fact is, you know you're just about to get a lie. The catch and release loopholes that the Democrats love, adore so much, attract so many unaccompanied alien children and family units to the border. It used to be mainly men coming, but then they found out, hey, if you come with a kid, we'll catch you, but then we'll release you. We'll let you go. Trump said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. And in May, the administration announced that they would prosecute every person who crosses the border illegally. Since it's not safe to send children to jail with their law-breaking parents, that meant the families would have to be separated. But if you look at this graph, between May and June, apprehensions go down because fewer people are crossing. And then in July, it goes right back up again when the liberal courts forced Trump to end the policy. But I gotta tell you, I've got a solution for deterring women and children coming to the border. Because guess what? Women and children are not gonna be able to scale a wall that's about 30 feet tall because guess what? 90% of people can't climb that. So boom, humanitarian crisis solved, build the wall. Now let's go to Chuck, who at least, Chuck moved his head a little bit so you knew he wasn't completely dead inside.
There's an obvious solution. Separate the shutdown from arguments over border security. There is bipartisan legislation supported by Democrats and Republicans to reopen government while allowing debate over border security to continue.
Again, this legislation does not fund a wall, Chuck, which is the whole point here. And want to know how many Republicans in the House support this? It's 5. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 238 Republicans in the House. So that means that's 1/48 of the caucus. So to call that bipartisan is a complete farce, just like this notion.
Mr. President, reopen the government and we can work to resolve our differences over border security, but end this shutdown now.
No. Because we've done that before, and we all know how that goes. And then when the coverage went into the night, cable news talking heads got in, and we got so many lies from the talking morons. We have more idiot comments than we have time to debunk. But the bottom line is, Democrats, they are unserious, and I believe disingenuous in these arguments. Because this is all stuff the Democrats used to support. Chuck Schumer said the president was unable to convince Congress or the American people to foot the bill. Really? Because you were convinced in 2006 when you voted for the Secure Fence Act. Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, they were convinced too. So what exactly happened, Chuck? Trump happened, and your Trump derangement syndrome kicked in. That's what happened. So I implore you, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, to reopen the government by supporting the $5.7 billion needed for this border wall so that the suffering families you claim to care so much about in the government about getting their paychecks, they'll get those paychecks. And an added benefit to all of this will be that the countless people suffering in this country because of illegal immigration and the border crisis will also have better lives. Look, I know the president said he'd own the shutdown, but tell me this. If he's the one who's willing to compromise in exchange for a border wall, and it's the Democrats who are the ones saying no if it funds the wall, which, by the way, is something all the experts agree is an essential component of border security, then we refuse to accept any of your compromises, then whose shutdown is it really? Shouldn't it be the Schumer shutdown? Shouldn't it be the Democrats' shutdown? Because after all, when Obama did it, it was Congress's fault. But whatever you want to call it, it really is the Democrats who are sabotaging our government, jeopardizing hundreds and thousands of people's paychecks so that more people can have the pleasure of being killed by illegal immigrants or overdose on the drugs that they bring. So, way to go, Democrats. That's so nice of you guys. Way to be team players for the American people. I honestly don't know how you guys sleep at night. So this week, we got two very different versions of a meeting that happened between lawmakers at the White House.
He sort of slammed the table, and when Leader Pelosi said she didn't agree with the wall, he just walked out and said, "We have nothing to discuss." So he said it was a waste of his time. That is sad and unfortunate. We want to come to an agreement. We believe in border security. We have different views. We've already offered the president our proposals, which has sat on his desk for several weeks. But this was really, really unfortunate, and in my judgment, somewhat unbecoming of a presidency.
But is that really what happened? And by the way, serious question. When you're at the optometrist, what kind of person is like, you know what, those are great, but do you have them in ruby red? because I think that would be quite dazzling on me. Because this is going to be my thing. I'm going to hang them really low on my nose so that I can talk down to the American people, so that when the president pounds his hands on the table, I can squeal like an old granny and say, "Oh, how unbecoming! We shan't reach an agreement if you're going to exhibit such boorish behavior." Seriously. What kind of frickin' pansy is scared off by someone who bangs on the table? What about this, Chuck Schumer? I mean, really, for you, that's the deal breaker, banging on the table? But are we really sure that's what happened? Because interestingly, here's how Republicans classified that very same meeting.
The president walked into the room and passed out candy. It was true.
He never raised his voice.
I don't recall him ever raising his voice or slamming his hand. But this is a president who feels very strongly about his commitment to see to the security of the American people.
And then the president himself also classified Chuck Schumer's description as absolutely false.
I didn't pound on tables. I didn't raise my voice. That was a lie. What you should do is give them Pinocchios, because if you ask Mike Pence and you ask Kevin McCarthy, I didn't smash the table. I should have, but I didn't smash the table. And that's the story.
So who are you going to trust? The dude with the stupid red glasses who lied to our faces in that grim address they gave to the nation? Or the consensus among all the others that that's not how the meeting went down? It upset Republican lawmakers so much that they're calling for cameras in the meetings now. Here's what the cameras, because they can't trust what the Democrats said. Here's what Senate Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy said that the president offered as a compromise to them, but then the stupid, stubborn Democrats turned it down.
The president would go back and forth in a negotiation in a very respectful way. I saw Schumer continue to raise his voice. The president then turned to the speaker and politely asked her, "Okay, Nancy, if we open the government up in 30 days, could we have border security?" She raised her hand and said, "No, not at all."
That's incredible. These people are radicals. This woman, Nancy Pelosi, wants to keep the government shut down for months simply because the president wants border security, which is something, again, that Democrats have been for in the past. And by the way, this is something that not enough people are talking about. Republicans already have compromised. Trump gave them a more than generous compromise in the past, because remember, Republicans initially wanted a $25 billion wall. When that went nowhere, Trump decreased his request by $20 billion to build the steel fence instead. So Republicans already gave you guys a $20 billion compromise. Chuck and Nance, that's a very generous compromise. In fact, the Democrats should be doing somersaults over that deal, especially since they say they're for border security and they want to work with Republicans to get it. Really? This is not how compromise is supposed to work. And if you look at how our government was intended to function, and to do so, we often have to look to how our founders intended it to function, Federalist number 22 says, quote, "Tedious delays, continual negotiation and intrigue, contemptible compromises of the public good, and yet in such a system, it is even happy when such compromises can take place. For upon some occasions, things will not admit of accommodation, and then the measures of government must be injuriously suspended or fatally defeated." So what the hell does that mean? Well, notice how he in this case is Alexander Hamilton, writes that upon some things, they will not admit of accommodation. And in this case, that would be the security of our borders. He talks about contemptible compromises for the public good. Compromise, everyone's like, well, the founders believed in compromise, so should you. They did, but it's a little more complicated than that. They believed it in some instances. But even if Nancy Pelosi thought that border security was contemptible, as the founder said, which, as a representative from a state where a border barrier has done immense good, would be absurd, wouldn't this be a compromise, as the founders would say, in favor of the public good? Because in this instance, all the people, literally the lives of tens of thousands of people each year, their lives are at stake. Wouldn't it be worth the Democrats reaching a compromise for their sake? We've showed you the destruction happening at the border and how it affects not just the border territories, but everyone in this country. The Democrats are really unwilling to compromise for their sake. You know, when a government shutdown happens, there's a lot of finger pointing that happens. And really, to be quite honest, it seems like both sides should be responsible, because what happens? There are things that each side is unwilling to cave on, and therefore no one can move forward. But usually it's the side unwilling to cave on the more reasonable thing that the public will tend to blame for the shutdown. Now, often what that more reasonable thing is hard to determine. But in this instance, it is not hard to determine, because the Democrats, their voting record proves that they believe in this. It proves they believe in a border wall. They believe in border security. So why would they not be willing to make that compromise that the founders discussed? Why would they not be willing to make that compromise on something that they believe in? The founders, they did believe that compromise was a last resort when they couldn't get everything they wanted or didn't have the power and risk losing it all. Here, we risk losing it all. Because if we lose our border, we lose the country. If we lose the country, that's losing it all. But this shouldn't even be a last resort scenario, because this is something everyone used to agree on. And therefore, it should be a no-brainer. It should be like putting wheels on a car to make it go. And, you know, the Democrats might say, well, you know, if you replace the wheels with drones, it might work a little bit. And no, we don't need to replace wheels with drones. We know how to make the car go. We don't need to do that. They're twisting themselves into pretzels, trying to come up with any other solution than a simple and effective border wall. But the Democrats' opposition, it's fanatical, and it is rooted in nothing but disdain for the president, and that is why this is their shutdown. They need to own it. They are to blame for all the folks who may not get their paycheck this week. They are to blame because they are refusing to compromise on things they used to agree on. The president has already offered a $20 billion compromise. The Democrats are the ones who are refusing to take an amazing deal on something they also know and have admitted and probably still do believe in is essential to our country's future and our security.